Welcome. 2 years ago at the SID annual conference, we had our first authors panel, and it was a huge success. That panel focused on creative nonfiction, a way to tell a true story, which included the author's voice. Today, we will be looking at another genre of creative nonfiction, the memoir. We are so lucky to have an amazing panel of Foreign Service officers and international development experts who have written memoirs. I am particularly excited about this genre, as not only do they tell their story, but also in many ways they share information about the international development space. How many of you can explain to your grandparents, parents, and other friends what you do for a living? Well, today we have a great panel to help you with that task. Jonathan Addleton is a career Foreign Service officer, former ambassador, and 5-time USAID mission director, and is calling in from Lahore, Pakistan, where he is the president rector for Foreman College. Indira Kaur Ahluwalia is an international development expert, activist, and entrepreneur turned advisor, coach, and now author. Her book is hot off the presses, just released in April 2021. Liz Maguire is an international development expert who has dedicated her life to advancing reproductive choice. Her senior leadership positions include serving for 16 years as CEO of EPAS and 22 years at USAID, where she was the first woman director of the Office of Population and Reproductive Health during the 1990s. And Roy Stacy is a career Foreign Service officer, former mission director, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Africa, also worked at the World Bank, OECD, and was president of the Club de Sahel. He is calling in from his home in Brittany, France. And I am so pleased to introduce our moderator, Lee Gutkind. And I couldn't think of anyone more perfect to moderate this panel. Lee was recognized by Vanity Fair as the godfather behind creative nonfiction. He is the author or editor of more than 30 books, and he also has just written his memoir, My Last 8,000 Days, an American Male in His 70s. Lee is founder and editor of Creative Nonfiction, the first and largest literary magazine to publish narrative nonfiction exclusively. He has listened and lectured to audiences around the world and appeared on many national radio and television shows, including The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, Good Morning America, National Public Radio's Talk of the Nation, and All Things Considered, as well as BBC World. Lee is Distinguished Writer in Resident at the Consortium for Science, Policy, and Outcomes at Arizona State University, and a professor in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society. For those who may want to write in the future, I highly recommend his book entitled, You Can't Make This Stuff Up, The Complete Guide to Writing Creative Nonfiction, from memoir to literary journalism to everything in between. And 2 years ago, I was lucky to be a student in one of Lee's classes, so I can recommend him highly as a professor too. Now let's get this exciting authors panel underway. Over to you, Lee.
Anne was a terrific student, by the way. And I have to say that she kind of defined for you what creative nonfiction really is. And so she learned a lot in my class, and also being pushed and prodded and nagged over a period of 15 weeks, she wrote some really terrific personal nonfiction. And personal nonfiction is what memoir is all about. And in some ways in my life, I have written over 30 books or edited over 30 books, but the most challenging book I have ever written was the story of my own life. And it was quite difficult. And I've had an interesting life, and I have tried to be a voyeur in some ways. I have spent my life immersing myself in other people's lives, in the robotics world, in the organ transplant world. I spent 4 years scrubbing with surgeons and jetting through the night on organ donor runs. I traveled with a crew of National League Baseball umpires. My first book was about wandering the country on a motorcycle. I've done all those things. I've tried to find adventure. I've tried to find journeys to take, using other people's lives and not my own. And if I had my life to do all over again, I would probably join SID and then follow many of you around and capture your lives, because they seem to be so much based upon these books, so much more interesting than mine in many respects. But Memoir was quite a challenge. I like to think about the way in which we write memoir, and to me, it was like sitting at my keyboard and my display every single day, and looking at this vast realm of videos of my life, and looking at the videos, remembering how when I was a kid, I was locked in the basement by my dad as punishment, and having to sit in the dark and think. And I remember being in the military, weighing 220 pounds and trying to kind of fit in with all kinds of people I did not know. And I remember being with those transplant candidates, those people who were dying of liver disease, kidney disease, heart disease, and all of their families. I look at all of these videos, and this book about baseball. I spent a whole year with the first Black National League Baseball umpire, the first Black person to be an umpire in the National League. And I watched the way in which he was hurt and insulted. We're talking about then the middle 1970s. And I see these videos, and as I am trying to reconnect my life and understand my life. And what's so cool when you're writing a memoir is you look at these things that happened to us in our past, and we can stop time. We can just stop, and we can recreate other visions of what could have happened, or what we should have done, or what people should have done. How we look at what happened to us 20, 30, 40 years ago, and adding insight, adding information, adding ideas, just kind of recapturing our life, but also communicating through imagination and through reflection what we would do now and what we want of our lives to be shown to other people. And your life, as members of SID, your lives traveling the world and doing things that we don't quite, we Americans, we real people, we people in a general readership category, we have absolutely no idea what we do on a day-to-day basis. And we have no idea about the journeys we take. And so a memoir is a personal journey. It's different than an autobiography. An autobiography pretty much covers the entire span of your life. But a memoir focuses in on the things that are most important in your life, the things that you really want to always remember and communicate to others. And it has a theme. I'm sure all of the writers here will talk about their theme and also tell you about their own personal videos. So yeah, I spent a lot of time, like you did, in other people's worlds, and they became my worlds, like the worlds you all infiltrated and became a part of your world. But looking at the span of your life, and then making connections and changes and reflections, that's such an incredible challenge. And the 4 people here with me on this Zoom, have done exactly that in many, many different ways. And so I'm really proud, I'm happy to be working with these folks because, not just because of their lives, but because they've captured it in a book. And there is, I got to tell you, my memoir off and on took 10 years to write. It is really a challenge to, I mean, you have a lot of words. The average memoir is probably 75 or 80,000 words. And so you have a lot to work with, but your lives are probably 100, a million words. And you've got to kind of capture the essence of your life, the things that were most meaningful to you, and how they should impact others that you share your stories with. You all have, your stories are all journeys. And all of you listening to us have been on a number of journeys. And my four compatriots here, my four co-authors, have been on amazing journeys in different directions, really different directions. So I'm pleased to have this conversation with you and with you all, and introduce four really, and work with four really different but fascinating people who have done this thing. They've written their lives. They've written their lives. And not only have they written their lives, but they got it published, okay? And they have made the SID main stage. And what better reward is that? So, so let's begin. I promised my panel members that I wouldn't tell them how I was going to begin. And I have no idea at this moment, but in 1 second, I'm going to say who it is. And I guess I'm going to say now, since I'm talking about video, I would like to start off with Indira. And later on, whenever you have a chance, Indira made a really terrific 3-minute video that I saw this morning about her book and her life. And it's a terrific little presentation that introduces her and her book, and the aspect of, in certain aspects of her life that may well surprise you, because she's done such great work in the world of international development, but she has an incredible, wonderful, amazing personal journey in 2 or 3 different ways that I hope she shares with you. So, so I'm going to ask Indira first to do what she wants to do. She may read for us, she may talk to us, and she may throw a tomato at us. But whatever the case, Indira, lead off this discussion.
Lee, thank you so much. It's very dangerous to say, go do what you want to do. But I'm going to take that and start off by thanking you for your very kind words. I'm really honored to be a part of this very distinguished panel. I hold each of you in high esteem, and your journeys and your courage in high esteem. I'm a first-time author, and I am really delighted to debut my memoir in a community in which I grew up. So let me start by doing a reading. I have to say, this is the first time I am reading from the book, which, as Anne said, was just published. So I'm really, really honored and excited to share this with you. Time stood still. I sat quietly, looking straight ahead at the white door in front of me that led to the rooms and Dr. Mazer's office in the back. I couldn't pray. I didn't think. I just waited. It took a while for Dr. Mazer to call me back. Just as I was walking in, my mother called my father, and he stepped out of the office to talk to her and tell her I was going in to say hello to Dr. Mazer. I walked towards Dr. Mazer's office, knowing I was going to face the guillotine. Dr. Mazer was sitting at her desk and motioned for me to come sit down. She got right to it. She said, "Dr. Butch just called me. It's spread." I didn't say anything. Dr. Mazer continued, "It's in the bones." For some odd reason, I felt relief. In the bones, I thought. I could handle it if it was in my pinky finger. In retrospect, I wasn't sure if this was my wretched sense of humor or a defense mechanism at play. I asked, where in the bones is it? It's in the bones. Where in the bones is it? I didn't understand why she wasn't answering me. I was still fixated on my little finger. I wanted her to confirm that. She didn't say anything. Then she said, it's everywhere. My mind stopped and my breathing picked up. I could hear myself breathing. It's everywhere? It's everywhere, I thought again. I felt the pain in my back, my hips. Suddenly, I felt a soreness at the back of my head. Dr. Meza spoke again. It's everywhere. I got it, yet I couldn't fully fathom it. It wasn't just in my pinky finger. It was everywhere. How did that happen? Dr. Meza bent across her desk and reached out her hands to hold mine. I leaned forward and stretched out my arms. She took my hands. She said, promise me you will fight. Promise me. My story, fast forward to hope, is about advanced breast cancer. But perhaps more importantly, it's about learning to face and live my life on its merit and on my terms with truth. Quickly, let me share the why, how, when, as much as some challenges and rewards of writing my memoir. You know, somebody planted a seed, and it's a seed that took root. And this is what this panel is really about. It's about us planting the seed for you, telling you that your story is valuable and that it is worth telling. A second reason I wrote this book is for the value of having a ripple effect. It is my sincere hope that my experiences can offer insights for others as they work through their own issues, whatever they may be. And there are two messages that I'd like to share about that ripple effect. The first is you have power, even when you don't have control. And it's up to you to choose to exercise your own power. And second, you're never alone in the midst of this humanity and faith. There are also very personal reasons why I wrote this book. My children were 5 and 3 when I started this journey in 2007. I have my 2 children, my niece and nephew, for whom I want to fill in the blanks about their own history, but also to give them my blueprint to prepare them for their lives. I also want to give gratitude. There are so many in this very community and even in this audience who have prayed for me and kept me in their thoughts through the years. Thank you. Thank you for building my strength. This is my way of paying it forward. This industry has also been very instrumental in getting this book done. It was at an event at CIDC on the Hill in January 2020, when a colleague, Carolee, said she was writing a book, which is now published. It's called Welcome Back to Abuja once again. She used a program called Book Creators, and we've published together through the New Degree Press using a hybrid model. I signed up for the program on June 10th, minutes before the deadline, and this program took me from concept to a published book in 10 months. When I was finally ready to write, even though the seed had been planted a while back, in early July, I started with a clean sheet of paper. The book itself has 3 parts. The what? I spent a lot more time on the diagnosis, that moment where you can either have hope or fear, or how you move more towards hope is what I'm trying to do. The how, what's enabled me. Science, humanity, and faith are the 3 areas that I speak about. And why? You know, being in this industry, everything is about lessons learned, and I've come up with 14. And I wrote that part first to see what it was that I had to say. There are challenges as you write, but especially when you write a memoir, as you get started, what holds you back is that you might hurt people with truth. I realized over time that the truth cannot just be a release for you yourself, but also for those who you're trying to protect. During the process of writing a memoir, the flow was just beautiful. It just came from within me. It presented without any filters. And knowing that I was doing that, I had to be really comfortable in my vulnerability. And as I wrote, I realized that my own vulnerability is a sacred connection to myself, but it's also a primary connection to you or humanity. And one of the other realizations was that while you can talk about things that are deeply personal, you can also keep what's private, private. It's your prerogative in terms of what you choose to share. After a few days that it's been since I published, there's been incredible support, incredible encouragement, and just heartwarming feedback. It is humbling, and it's also giving me strength to look forward. There's this incredible sense of satisfaction as a reward for putting this out there. This was certainly within me, and it is my prayer that it reaches where it can be helpful. I feel really good about this chapter and how it's starting. A colleague reached out to wish me well and said, "Good luck as you start your new journey as a writer, motivational speaker, and philosopher." So be it. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you for a absolutely terrific reading and presentation. You've told us a lot about your life, and you've given us a taste of your book, which I really appreciate. And I wanted to say something about the way in which Indira started her presentation with that reading. I talked to you about video before, and what she did in that video was provide us with a scene, provide us with an incident, what I like to call in the memoir world, the writing world, a magic moment, a time that she recreated for us that stimulated, that absolutely stimulated and seems to have started her re-journey or her new journey into a different kind of world. And so when you all begin to write your memoir, think about these magic moments that occurred in your life and recreate them and think a lot about them. We'll talk some more. I don't want to take too much away. There's more to say about what Indira told us, really good stuff. But I don't want to I could go on and on about Indira's book and about her presentation, but I don't want to do that. I want to introduce the rest of you folks, but thank you so much. And hey, Jonathan, you've done something in many ways different, but you have done actually something I only realized today, that this book that Jonathan is talking about is his second book, not his first. And so maybe you had kind of a different experience, but Jonathan, take it away. This is, it's your stage now.
Thank you. It is indeed an honor to be here. I think I'll follow the practice that's emerging of starting with the reading and then having a few remarks, trying to be relatively brief, and I think I'll do that. The setting for this one, by the way, is I've flown back from Dover 3 days previously. Had been in an incident in Zabul in which 5 of my colleagues had been killed, 3 soldiers, my translator, and Ann Schmiedinghoff, a foreign service officer. I know some people are tired of Afghanistan. I know we're about to leave, but I think this may bring back some of the memories, and I wouldn't doubt that some of the SID people there have been in Afghanistan as well. So this is from the dust of Kandahar. 3 days later, I returned to Afghanistan to complete the remaining 20 weeks of my allotted time, finishing the year-long task that had been set before me. Yet even now, I have never quite left Afghanistan behind. I think about it often. At odd moments, memories from that year return, unprompted and seemingly for no reason at all. I remember the rush of a hot air through an open Black Hawk door, the winter fires marking the Kuchi encampments down below, the taste of cardamom tea in a musty government office in Kandahar, the smell of roses in the small garden outside, the dust kicked up by a special forces platoon returning in off-road vehicles at dusk to Tarancote, the gentle rustle of the wind blowing through a stand of pine trees on a lonely hill in Zabul, the brilliant night sky above Alexander's castle in Kalat, the awful finality of a single trumpeter playing Day is Done to conclude yet another memorial service for yet another young American soldier dying far away from home. I have no ear for music, but I will never forget those few forlorn notes from that one lone trumpeter echoing hauntingly across the Horn of Panjwai, off a brown and desolate mountaintop set above a remote and by now abandoned military outpost somewhere in southern Afghanistan. This was from my second memoir. My first one, as Lee alluded to, was called Some Far and Distant Place, and a very different kind of book in many ways. It is basically a reflection on the first 18 years of my life, which I happen to have been born in Pakistan and raised in the Himalayas. And it was a book that I spent, I think, at least 10 years. This was written relatively early in my life, but basically it was the reflections of when I returned to the United States at 18 for about the next 10 years, sort of ruminating about what it meant to have grown up in Pakistan and then be taken to the US, if you will. I think, like Indira, it was prompted partly by children. In my case, Some Far and Distant Place starts off by saying this manuscript was started in the fall of 1990 when I worked in Yemen and was waiting for the first Gulf War to begin. Fiona was in Scotland about to give birth to her long-awaited first child. The loneliness of separation, the anxiety of pending war, the prospects of becoming a father, all somehow contributed toward a growing introspection of what increasingly seemed like my own remote and improbable childhood in Pakistan. So this one was started for family, but I think later I thought it might have a bigger audience, including those that had shared sort of a TCK, third culture kid childhood. The one other thing I should say about this book, it was written in the 90s. In some ways, it was a reaction to what I call the poor, pitiful me genre of American memoir, which at least at that time was trying to say, or trying to indicate, I had the worst childhood of all. And so that was part of it. And I think it's interesting, Indira mentioned this also, the sense of gratitude. This book actually, it's partly about stereotypes. I was born the child of missionaries, and a lot of stereotypes, if I dare say, including at SID, about what missionary kids do. It was very different than you might imagine. But the sense of this book is basically about gratitude, along with a strong sense of wonder and astonishment. And it was that wonder and astonishment from my childhood that I think took me through the rest of my life. The motive behind Dust of Kandahar was actually quite similar for family. I knew I was taking a tough assignment. I did not know what was going to happen. I did, I think, as anybody does. I mean, this was definitely a year of living dangerously. Multiple trips beyond the so-called wire. Met a lot of people, traveled a lot of distances in the 4 provinces of southern Afghanistan. But yeah, imagined when I went to bed every night, or for that matter, when I left the wire, is this the last time? And basically did want to leave something behind. I think that's more common among writers than you might imagine, especially as you look back and reflect on your life. And in a place like Afghanistan, you reflect on your life quite often. I would say the second one, the first one involved a lot of the traditional reflecting, thinking, maybe assisted in some cases by letters and diaries and photographs. The second one was actually in some sense easier to write because I kept a memoir, I kept a journal, I kept a diary throughout that time there. And so I actually did think that there was no way that I could capture that year except for in memoir and except for in diary format. It's just this combination of routine day in, day out, punctuated by these incredibly dramatic scenes, which I've alluded to already. Some readers have said that the relentless series of Purple Heart ceremonies, of ramp ceremonies, of memorial services on remote and far-flung bases is what stays with them after reading the book, because it's a relentless series of them, not just 1 or 2 descriptions, but it happened very frequently in southern Afghanistan. And of course, there is that event that I alluded to halfway through my time, which was an IED attack followed by a suicide bomber that left 5 of my colleagues dead. And of course, I came back to Kandahar, the US, and then back to Kandahar to finish off. But it was an intense experience in so many ways. And again, I dare say that more than a few of the people in this conference at SID, either in Iraq or Afghanistan, that was part of it. There are reflections on that. I think in fairness to my colleagues, I'm going to finish with one last paragraph, and it's the final entry of this diary. As I was leaving Afghanistan, woke up at 4:45 for the final run to Kandahar Kabul airport. Gradually, the departure lounge is beginning to fill up. I don't recognize anyone. Prior to typing this, I cleaned my computer screen with the sleeve of my shirt. A thick caking of dust from Kandahar wiped off the face of the earth in seconds, as if it had never been. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm really curious about how difficult it must have been for you to keep a journal or a diary every day. It must have been a big pain in the rear end after a while to have to do that every single day. Was it hard, or was it soothing and reinforcing? And how much time did you spend on your journal every day?
I didn't spend that much time, to be honest. I was reflective. A lot of those entries are written after midnight. It was good, though. It was that final reflection at the end of every day. I think it was absolutely the right thing to do. And again, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 10 minutes. It was not a long process. But I did make a point before I went to bed in my little tiny, as you can imagine, quarters. I just put it into the computer. I type fast, and that's what I did. But I would not go to bed without doing the diary.
So wait a minute, you wrote this book in 5 and 10 minute bursts of reflection. There was never all of this this awful hour after hour of struggle with words and sentences and ideas. I wish I could write that way. 5 minutes every day, and I got a book in a year, right?
Well, I think it's more my typing. When I, this will date me, but when I came back to the States, I mentioned after Pakistan, I tested out at Kelly Girl, as it was then called, and everybody said, "Come over and look at this guy. He did 120 words a minute." So I type as fast as I think, and that probably helped. And some of the entries, obviously, after April 6th, the event that I talked about, that was a very lengthy, several pages in the book, and that was pouring my guts out. But you can imagine that was pouring my guts out. I think that there's a certain aspect of a book that, and maybe this gets into struggle. There's a struggle part. I'm thinking of Some Far and Distant Place. The second half, I suppose, was the struggle because I thought I had a book and now I had to finish it. But the first half of that book, it was like somebody told me, write. You know, the proverbial angel comes and says, write. This was the one about growing up in Pakistan. I had carried these things intensely into my brain for so long that it poured out, and it poured out quickly.
Terrific. Well, thanks for your presentation, and thanks for your lead-off magic moment. It was really terrific and beautiful to listen to. I want to go to the delinquent in the crowd. Roy calls himself a delinquent, and but he also has been around for quite a long time. There's not a lot of people who can remember Pearl Harbor and what happened at that particular moment. So I want to introduce us to, or connect us with, our next guest and or panel member. Roy has a really interesting journey that he has taken from being that delinquent to being someone so accredited and distinguished. And so, Roy, why don't you talk a little bit, or read a little bit, or do whatever you want to do in the next 5 or 6 minutes to get us to know you better.
Thank you very much, Lee, and fellow panelists. You're right. My earliest memory in life is watching with my father the bombing of Pearl Harbor from a beach near our house. So this memoir covers a period of 80 years of my life, and which is still going on. But my earliest memory is watching the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I wrote the memoir basically for 3 reasons. First of all, so my 2 sons would know what I did with my life and how I avoided making a train wreck out of it and managed to reboot my life and turn it around and make something of myself. Secondly, to demonstrate to other family members that I was not headed towards a life of criminality, as all believed. They also figured I was going to end up in prison, and that I could put things together, work my way through college. My mother didn't have the finances to put me through college. My father died at an early age of cirrhosis of the liver. He was an alcoholic. And so I had to work my way through college. And I wanted my broader family members to know that I was not destined to a life of criminality. And thirdly, I wanted it to be a development guide, the do's and don'ts of the development of international development for development professionals. What works and what doesn't, and what are the most positive multipliers for international development. So with that, I'm just going to read a couple of excerpts really quickly. In Zimbabwe, people frequently ask me about the relationships between the minority whites and the majority black. And it was generally, at the time I was there, from 1981 to 1986, very, very positive. And there was an amazing story that occurred where a Zimbabwean mother with a small baby and was hitchhiking down the road, and a white farmer picked her up. She was on her way to a health clinic for a mother-child checkup. Now, this was an act of kindness that turned out to be fortuitous for the white farmer. Shortly after they started down the dirt road, the pickup truck coughed and stuttered to a halt. "Damn," said the white farmer, "what can this be?" He lifted the hood of the truck to take a look at the motor and came face to face with a very large spitting cobra. Before he could protect himself, the serpent unleashed two streams of deadly venom into his eyes, sending him cursing in pain to the ground. He knew, as did the mother, the black woman, that unless neutralized, the venom would result in certain blindness and possibly death. But the lactating mother knew something that the farmer apparently did not know. She knew that human breast milk was a very effective antidote to cobra venom. She acted quickly. Placing her infant on the seat of the vehicle, she extracted her very full breast and washed out the eyes of the farmer with her milk. Before too long, another passing vehicle took them all to the nearest health clinic, where the farmer received further treatment from the doctor. He told the white farmer later that his eyesight and maybe his life had been saved by the rapid remedial washing of his eyes with the breast milk from this new mom. A few months later, the farmer set up a scholarship for the baby to demonstrate his gratitude. And I really love that story. And I wanted to make one other very, very brief reading, if I may. This was when I was the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State, and I would start off every morning with a briefing from a briefer who arrived with the briefcase handcuffed to his wrist, and I would read the papers, and back in the briefcase he would go. And then I would start off on these meetings, one after an hour, hour after hour, and I would get progressively later each day, and for each meeting. And I was getting near the end of the day one day, and I was flying by the desk of my wonderful secretary, Sybil, and she said, "Mr. Stacy, I'm really worried about you, that you're going to have some kind of a heart attack and leave us long before the good Lord intended." I chuckled and asked her for the papers for my next meeting, adding that I was late again. With that, Sybil continued. She said, "I also know what they're going to put on your tombstone, Mr. Stacy." I said, "What's that?" She said, "Always late on earth, but early for heaven." So thank you for letting me read those couple of excerpts from the book.
Thank you for reading for us, and thanks for giving us an idea of what your book is all about. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all your service over the years. It's a long time, many years. So now, hey Liz, we're together now, you and me. You are not your last, but certainly not least. I spent some time reading a little bit about what people thought about Elizabeth Maguire, and this word: passionate, determined, humble, brilliant, exhilarating. People kept saying it again and again. And so Liz, I just said those words. And so we all expect this from you. So be passionate, please. Prove that all of your admirers right. Be passionate, be critical, be determined, and knock us out.
Thank you so much, Lee, for those comments. I hope I live up to your expectations. It's really an honor to be here with all of you, my distinguished panelists, and everyone in the audience. And to set the stage, like the others, I'm going to read a brief excerpt from my memoir, Advancing Reproductive Choice, and then talk about why and how I wrote it. From a distance, I saw a young woman lying on the ground in tremendous pain and hemorrhaging badly. The other sick people near her were also waiting to get into the hospital, but were accompanied by family members. There were no healthcare providers in sight. They were attending to other patients inside the crowded facility in Dakar, Senegal. It was heartbreaking to witness this teenager all alone, with no one comforting her or trying to save her life. I learned later from a nurse that the young woman died as a result of sepsis from a self-induced or back alley abortion. Her tragic death could have been prevented if she had received the information and quality care she deserved. Watching this young Senegalese woman suffer such a lonely and senseless death during my first trip to Africa in 1972 had a profound impact. It was a key motivating factor in my pursuing a career where I could contribute to saving and improving women's lives in the developing world. So this trip was the beginning of my international work to help women and girls make their own reproductive decisions freely and safely through increasing access to modern methods of contraception and other essential reproductive health services, as well as advancing their sexual and reproductive rights. So now, 50 years later, I continue to contribute to this mission in various capacities. While I never intended to write a memoir, there are several reasons why I ultimately decided to do so. First, I wanted to express my gratitude to colleagues from different chapters of my career, as well as the extraordinary people that I met during my rich and wide-ranging experiences in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. In addition, this was an opportunity to discuss the evolution of the international sexual and reproductive rights field since the 1970s, highlighting the significant advances that have taken place and also the major challenges that remain, now exacerbated by COVID-19. And another important reason for writing this book was to inspire new generations of leaders to complete the unfinished agenda in this critical area. So in Advancing Reproductive Choice, I highlight memorable moments in my life and work. And I also reflect on core values, leadership, and mentorship. And throughout my memoir, I try to convey what's possible in life and leadership with passion, perseverance, compassion, kindness, gratitude, optimism, curiosity, and continuous learning, among other guiding principles. So writing my memoir was, of course, a lot of work, but immensely rewarding. And it was a very personal and passionate experience. I found it energizing to recall and record, to the best of my memory, special moments, inspiring people, amazing experiences. And I also wanted to offer my perspectives on progress, innovations, and obstacles in helping women and girls in developing countries gain control over their bodies, their lives, and their futures. And I only had just a few people helping me with this book. A couple of colleagues who reviewed sections related to my work period, and plus a copy editor, a book designer, and a website creator. And then I did the research and the fact checking and the final editing and the proofreading. But once I had a final manuscript, I worked online with the self-publishing company, and they managed the paperback and ebook versions, printing on demand and ensuring widespread distribution through major global outlets. So when my book was published in last December, I was surprised to find that actually it attracted a wider audience than I had expected. It sort of went beyond the sexual and reproductive health and rights community. And it recently won an award, which surprised me as well. But the most fun was that I learned that my memoir was used by several schools of public health this past semester. And I was invited to serve as a guest lecturer, which was a lot of fun. So based on my own experience, and I would strongly recommend others to tell your story and even consider self-publishing. I believe that all of us who work in international development can learn a lot from each other's experiences and perspectives. And together we must build a more equitable, healthier, and sustainable future for all members of our global society. So thank you very much for this opportunity. I know we're short on time, but I'll turn it back to you, Lee.
Yeah, that's always the problem. We're always short on time when something fascinating is going on. So, okay. Okay, so what was, to all of you, the scariest moment about writing, producing a memoir, sharing your life, your lives with people that you, well, people that you don't know, but maybe even scarier for when you think about you're sharing your life and your thoughts, your intimate most thoughts with the people you do know. Anybody want to jump in and yeah, Jonathan, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just say that maybe this is echoing Indira's comment, but it's kind of what you say about people. You know, my motto in life actually is a very old saying: be kind to those you meet, for they too are involved in a great struggle. And you realize, of course, everybody's in a struggle, and you want to give fairness to them. It can't be totally through your lens. You have the sort of empathy that's there. And I think in both books, both memoirs, one was your childhood stuff, how much you write about the teacher who wasn't so great. And then, of course, in Afghanistan, where you see people at the best and the worst, how do you treat that? So yeah, it's the writing about others, not the fear about what others might think when they read it.
Oh, I would.
Sorry, go ahead, next.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jonathan, because you want to be respectful of the story you tell and not represent somebody else's position. The other thing that I think doing this is dealing with your own imposter syndrome. And as I've learned much in life, you make it up as you go, but this is your own story. You have your own experience to rely on, and you can do with it and share as much of it as you want. But imposter syndrome is real. I mean, it's for anybody who puts themselves out there, you're putting yourself up for judgment. And you have to have the courage because you have a purpose. And I think all of us spoke from gratitude, and also sort of this idea of sharing from a perspective of our own truth. So that higher purpose hopefully takes you over the hump of imposter syndrome.
I would like to just say something also. I love African proverbs, and there's an African proverb that says, the first best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. And timing is everything. And if you haven't written a memoir, if you haven't written your book, do it now. Write about your life and share it with your family and share it with the world. As I said, timing is the first most important thing in life, and timing is the second most important thing in life.
Do you guys have any, I don't know how much time we have left, but it's not a lot. You have any regrets, stuff you missed, people that you that maybe you forgot about, or people that you wrote too much about? If you had it to do it again, and God knows you probably don't want to do it again, different, but any regrets, any problems, any challenges? Did you get any hate mail?
I think that I would have benefited from taking one of your courses, Lee.
Okay.
But I actually found it such an exciting experience and was overwhelmed by the response. And people who said, I never knew that about you, or I learned things about you that, that people were just surprised and fascinated. And that surprised me a lot. I was humbled by that.
Indira, anything?
You would think I know what the mute button is, right?
Yeah.
There's always people and stories that come to you after you've written the book. And it's to those people I apologize, because I owe them the same gratitude. And it also opens up an amazing way to discover the impact that other people have on you. And one of the gifts in being able to write this book is actually been, we did a significant pre-sale campaign, and I've just gotten out 323 books, and writing to each person who's contributed and supported this journey was a really important part of giving gratitude for their place in my life. But it reminds me of so many others that I want to give that thanks to.
I guess I want to say, I guess I have to, I don't know how much time I have left, but it sure isn't a lot. So let me just say something that struck me as I have been listening to your conversations. Now, I work for a science policy think tank at Arizona State University, and but I'm also very, very, very much connected and always have been in the literary and writing world. And a word that you guys have used repeatedly, all four of you here, rarely ever comes up in this writing world of mine, this literary or journalistic world. But you're all using the G word, the gratitude word. And I got to say, I'm quite taken by that, and I'm moved by that. And my colleagues, my writing colleagues, don't talk gratitude. They talk competition. They talk ego. They talk about getting satisfaction. They talk about money. They talk about book sales and all that stuff, and that's fine. I talk about that too, way too often. But I so very much appreciate the ways in which you are looking back at your life, and at the way in which you kind of look at this this incredible memoir achievement by talking about how much you appreciate what you learned, how much you appreciate from the people you learned all that stuff from. It really, I find it quite exhilarating, and so I just want to say in the end here, as a veteran teacher of writing and a writer myself, I have to have a great deal of gratitude for you and for you sharing that with all of us and with me, and I'm going to think about that much more often. There's a lot to be thankful for, writing a book is a fight, and life in many ways is a big ongoing, never-ending fight. But in the end, you guys have found a way to communicate understanding and gratitude for the lives you've led. So thank you so much. You were terrific, and thank you for your message to all of us. Anne, do you want to?
Well, I do. I actually want to express my gratitude to each of you. This was incredibly inspiring, and I might even pick up my pen again. But I also encourage our participants to also join this advocation and write more about the work that we do, because sharing what you have shared actually helps us all collaborate together around the world. And it is a very unique profession. It is one of gratitude, and it is one of service. So thank you again for this inspiring panel.